All right, here we are, day 2 of ASOTU CON. Day 1 was out of control. All the comments, the conversations that are happening is everything I think we wanted it to be. So we have Steve Greenfield up here with us today.
Hold on. Let's ask these guys, how many hours of sleep did you get last night?
4 hours and 38 minutes, I think, was my watch.
Crushed it at 6 hours. I feel amazing.
Shut up.
Really
he did not get 6 hours of sleep
got
last
6
night.
hours. You realize you did
No one else out here got 6 hours.
You did see that I have
You're like
4
a baby.
kids.
You're like a little baby.
I am a little baby.
Yeah. At least you're looking after your health. You look great.
I feel great.
His beard has less gray than mine.
You can't see him up close, but he looks really great.
So Kyle's been telling this story that, what was it, your wife showed you a picture, was it 6 years ago?
Three
years ago, right, when you decided.
It's even worse.
It feels like 6 years. 3 years ago when Kyle decided to leave the store and come and work with ASOTU, and you and I.
Beautiful, full brown beard.
Dark brown.
And it's gray.
It's going great.
Youth. That's
you guys
3
are going to need
years.
like speckled hats soon, maybe. Like your hats are going to have to reflect the beard color.
We're going to lean into it.
All right.
I'm okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us at the podcast. We're in front of a live breakfast audience today. There's probably 100 and some people in here. How are you guys feeling today?
The early crew. Give it up for the early crew.
The early crew. The Maryland Auto Dealer Association is just about 100 yards away from us having their annual meeting.
They got 100. We stuffed 100 people in a tiny room back there. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it's real tight.
And then in another breakout room, we had less people, but we just did a parenting session, which was amazing.
That's really cool.
Yeah, we have one person who's excited.
Yeah,
about
one
that.
person.
We got a
Parenting.
woo. That's perfect.
And so there's just a lot of
I don't even know, what is a parenting session? What is that?
It's pretty self-explanatory. No, I'm just kidding.
Is it?
No,
It's
you're like,
not.
apparently
I'm
not.
kind of scared to ask.
This was
but-
basically how to be a better parent while also being a busy professional.
Oh, wow. That's great.
It was really cool. The Dailies brought their family therapist of the decade. I literally.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, bring your therapist to work day.
Yeah.
It's a little scary.
Shame I missed that.
It was a lot of fun. Well, we're
I could
gonna
use
do
it with my
again.
cats.
Yes.
Lots of cats.
Better cat parent.
Oh. Is there therapy? Cat therapy? Yeah. I don't know. But either way, go ahead.
Yeah, Steve, I want to get into it. I've watched you kind of be almost all over the world recently.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah, you're like
How much sleep did you get last night on a plane?
Been on a plane half the first half of the year, but what I'd love to hear from you, you know, we always talk about like the relevant news of the day on this podcast, but I'm sure that the conversations that you get to have, because you've been in a couple other countries even recently, are maybe all the same or a little bit different than what you're hearing in the U.S. What's been some of the themes, or one or two of the themes that you've experienced in your travels this year so far?
Yeah, it's a good question. So to put in perspective, 2 weeks ago, I was in Qatar, and you know, here you've got a country that oil and gas was discovered in 75 years ago, 1939, and now 300,000 Qataris live in that country. 300,000 in the entire country, and they have 15% of all the oil and gas on the face of the earth.
Oh my goodness.
So these per capita are the most affluent people in the world, but when you fly in, like, it's all desert. It's all desert.
That's incredible.
So it's inhospitable. So it's a very interesting juxtaposition. And ironically, I was there for a mobility conference where they're pushing autonomous and electrification. And it didn't take me 24 hours. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I'm like, why on earth, if you're sitting on like 15% of all the oil in the world,
Do you want
do you
electrification?
give a crap? It's a threat to
Yeah, I was going to say,
move
are
to
they
electrification.
like look grumpy when you get there?
Yeah, exactly
What is
right.
that?
So very interesting dynamics over there, but it's sort of like in the world where you've got all the money you could ever spend, you need something to differentiate. So they have the world's best airport in Qatar.
Right.
And this is the world in the Middle East where if you can get a single-digit license plate for your Lamborghini, the license plate costs $10 million, literally, right? So you need status symbols to stand out. So
Wait,
very
so
interesting.
you're saying you can buy a $10 million license plate because it's got 1 through 10 or 1 through 9,
That's correct.
and it's just
So you
showing
think,
like
if your neighbors could own 100 Lamborghinis, what's the one way you can stand out? You need to own something that nobody else
there's
can own.
scarcity, 1
That's
through
right.
9.
Only 9 people.
Exactly right.
Wow.
Exactly
Are they
right. So that's
transferable?
one. And then, you know, I was in Amsterdam. Ironically, I was presenting in Amsterdam on Tuesday at noon, and I was here at 1:30 in the morning. No, that same day.
Thank you.
So that's weird.
I saw that on your
That was
calendar.
weird. I was like, how does that
sure
work?
Steve's coming to a
Yeah, how does that work?
And Kyle's
So-
like, he has a room.
And I connected through Atlanta. But the interesting thing about Amsterdam, to juxtapose, is like one of the most livable, walkable countries and cities on the face of the earth. Very green. And at 4:30, I was walking out to get the night before. I was walking out to get something to eat. And I mean, you really have to be careful because of the bike paths. Everyone's there.
biking, yeah.
And at 4:30, everybody's out of work. So it's like traffic jams of bikes on these bike paths, which is really interesting to see. But they're the quote-unquote 15-minute city where people live within 15 minutes of everything they need and can either walk or bike to the grocery store, to the movie theater, to the shopping malls. Their place of work and the parks is very, very interesting to see, right? So they have the density to be able to do that and the climate. But, I mean, to your point, juxtaposing these interesting places around the world, the other observation I'll have is, this level 5 autonomy, like that may never happen in the U.S. with the cruises and the Waymos. In countries that where they have top-down control, China, for example, or the Middle East, where you've got a monarchy who controls the whole country, I mean, they can just cram through level 5 autonomy. I mean, it's going to happen. You're going to go to some of these countries and you won't be able to drive.
No one will be driving.
No one will be driving because it will be mandated. I mean, I think there's little doubt that if a country was able to switch to 100% autonomy, there will be fewer deaths.
Sure. Yeah,
Fewer
because everything's
accidents.
talking to each other.
But in the U.S., where we are, I mean, we're never going to get there. But these countries that can cram down the decision from the top down will binary flip, like kind of like Norway has with EVs. Will flip over to autonomous vehicles, and then you'll go there and you'll be like, there isn't a car with a driver. And I think that'll all happen within the next 5 or 10 years in some of these countries.
Wow, 5 to 10 years.
That's nuts.
No drivers.
It is nuts. But I don't think any time, I don't know how long I'm going to be on this earth, but I mean, no time in my lifetime will we have level 5 autonomy in the US. It'll be like these edge cases where you can get into a Waymo in Phoenix, but only when the weather's perfect.
Yes.
That's where you guys live 6 months out of the year.
Yeah.
Well,
where I live, he's like, don't group me in with that.
Where you live, 4 to 6 months of the year, snow and salt and
variables
stuff are going to crust over the lenses on the Tesla cameras.
Yep.
So you can't have full autonomy in where you live is like the same as me. You might get 10 months out of the year, but we get wicked thunderstorms.
Absolutely.
And during a thunderstorm, by the way, 5G doesn't work. So the connectivity to the cloud isn't going to work in a car. And definitely like all those lenses get fogged up. So the cars are basically going to just turn off, go to the side of the road and park and say, hey, Kyle, take over because I don't want to risk you.
That's unbelievable. Just things that you don't think about or that aren't being talked about, especially in the landscape of like in the political landscape where the idealism of these things sometimes overrides the reality of it, the reality of it. So I want to go back to like the Qatar EV thing. Is there interest in that just because they know that they can still ship the oil everywhere else around the world, and for them it's a status symbol to have all EVs in the country, basically?
Well, my sense is, so they have almost every single passenger bus all electrified already. And the next step will be to get every passenger vehicle electrified. As you can imagine, the EVs aren't manufactured there, so they're coming from China. So all these vehicles coming in are Chinese vehicles, right? China's a big exporter of cars in general and EVs specifically. And I think it's going to be bragging rights, like the single-digit Lamborghini license plate. It's like if they can go to 100% electrification and 100% autonomy first.
They'll tell the world about it.
First country in the world that does so. It's the same reason that they spent $3 billion on an airport to have the best airport in the world, which is like mind-blowing when you go into this airport.
Yeah, I saw. You made
like
a post
shopping
about
mall.
it.
It's really amazing. But they need bragging rights. They've got all the money in the world, so they can spend an unlimited amount of money on anything they want to achieve. So it's achieving things first, and then having the bragging rights in the Middle East and globally to say we got there first. That's all I think it is. But yeah, they have to have a high degree of confidence that countries like the U.S. and other countries will continue to burn the oil until it's all gone.
And they will.
Amazing. All right, so that's a much more broad stroke, but you also spend a lot of time on the ground, boots on ground, with dealers, especially in the U.S., considering like what's top of mind. We kind of asked the question during the podcast yesterday, what are people asking about? And I think someone said, what do the salespeople know? Can a consumer actually get educated at a dealership? And then the other one was, what's my monthly payment? climate, right? Are you experiencing those same things, or are there other things that you're hearing dealers talk about as like the boots on ground this month right now?
Yeah, I think we're hearing all of it real time on the stage, thanks to you guys bringing dealers up here that are like, very forward thinking. I think a lot of it is around what front end grosses are going to be on EVs versus ICE vehicles. What I'm challenged with, and I don't know if we've heard this yet, but if you've got a salesperson and a consumer comes in, even with the intent to buy an EV, and I size up this consumer, I'm like, I want to make a lot less gross on that EV than an ICE car. Why wouldn't the salesperson do their best to flip them over to an ICE car? So, and that's going to get worse this year as we get more supply with fixed demand. I mean, margins on the front end of EVs are going to
sometimes zero,
or they're going to be negative. Like they're going to be well into negative. Like a dealer's going to literally look and say, "Oh my God, I got to help the OEM now move these EVs. So I got to take a loss on every single car." And then somebody who's getting a commission is going to be like, "I get no commission on that car. Why would I encourage the consumer to buy the EV? I'm going to flip them over to an ICE vehicle."
Yeah.
So there will be
specifically
dysfunctional
a
dynamics.
2022 ICE vehicle, right?
Yes.
Right. Used car,
because
margin compression, all that type of stuff. So, so unintentionally, we'll continue to leave EVs on the lot. Right. Yeah.
And then the OEM has no choice but to come in over top with more incentives and more incentives. So where you saw Ford lose $5 billion in their EV division last year, the blood loss on these EV divisions will be really bad, really, really bad. Like it's already bad enough. You hear Ford losing 30 or 40 grand per car sold in their EV divisions. It's going to get far worse. And then, the CEOs of these companies are going to be like, the Wall Street analysts are going to say, well, how much longer are you going to spend money on these like atrocious losses in your EV operations, right? So I do believe EVs get far too much stage time at conferences in general, but it's going to get really, really ugly here, I think. I don't know the right way out of this.
It feels like speed wobbles. Like you watch a skateboarder go down a fast hill, and then all of a sudden you see they correct this way, then they overcorrect, and they overcorrect. This feels like just the next in the overcorrections, where now, like there was a story this week we talked about where Nissan is asking dealers to help move the inventory. They're like, we have no more money to put in the truck, right? Like, we need you to help move it. And the consumer, from the consumer's perspective, you see that EVs are getting cheaper, right? We were talking about, my sister was like, I have $300 a month. Here's the need, here's my life. I was like, Ioniq 5, right?
Yeah.
However, like, that's not a realistic, profitable mentality, but consumers like, oh, you know what? Maybe EVs are affordable.
So adoption seems to speed up for a bit of time.
But it's still not profitable.
You can juice sales.
Artificially.
We know that most consumers, as dealers will tell you, are payment shoppers. And if you give me a $299 a month on something with a little down, I'm like, I'm all in. I don't really care what it is.
At 18-month commitment. If I don't like it, I only have it for 18 months.
Right. And you're not taking the residual risk. So even if EV prices in 2 to 3 years are like in the toilet, then I'm not taking the residual risk. So there's going to be all these cars coming back, and the captive finance companies are going to be taking massive losses in 3 years, right? So it's a very interesting dynamic.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the speed wobbles. That's my mental space.
Well, yeah, and not just that, but you're like, we also may not see the impact of this for 2 or 3 years. Right? Which is the crazy thing. Actually, it's a very similar thing that's happening right now with lease returns and the impact that we aren't seeing from early COVID and the lack of used car inventory, right? So it's a similar trailing return thing. Yeah,
we have too many EVs.
Yes.
And if they keep innovating, which they are, and the new generation of EVs come out and they have more range and can be charged faster and have more technology
figured out the pace of trade cycle management.
No one's going to want these 3-year-old EVs, right? So it's going to even hurt more in terms of the
It's the same thing as nobody wants the 1-year-old, 2-year-old iPhone, right? It's that same type of innovation that's much quicker in the R&D cycle for these OEMs, and so that's dangerous for, people not wanting these things.
Right.
Wow.
Well, we are 10 minutes to the start of day 2, so roll the outro music, if you would. There it is.
There it is.
I like that power. Steve, thank you so much for being a part of this event, for always being generous with your time and your insights, and your travel plans. We live vicariously through your travel.
Well, kudos to you guys. Great conference. Let's hear a round of applause for these two dudes.